Hi, and welcome back to PSYCHlops. Last time we were talking about character motivation in video games and how important it is that your character be personally motivated to do whatever it is that they're doing. Today we're going to look at some examples of games, and to start off we're going to look at some games that get it wrong so that you can see what I'm talking about. Probably the best place to begin is with any given MMO, and it is the problem with quests. Now, in most MMOs, whether it be WoW or Lord of the Rings Online or even Age of Conan, the game has an underlying storyline. It's there. Everything you do is built around the story. But your actions don't make sense in the context of the story. For example, you go up to a guy and he gives you a quest. Well, why should you bother when there are literally tons of people standing around him already doing it? There is no value in what you're doing, no permanence in what you do once it's accomplished. Even in the beginning stages, if you're going into some guy's cellar to clear out rats and you leave, another guy's going in to do the same thing. You have accomplished nothing. To push the issue a bit further, what about later on, when you're finally in the storyline and you and your group of people are dealing with some, nameless evil? Where are the standing armies of the land? What about the local governing authority? Where are they in this? True, your character may have personal reason to be fighting this particular enemy, but your character doesn't have motivation to be crazy about it. Going up against what amounts to an army with just you and a handful of friends makes no sense and is not something that anyone would do. There's no reason why you wouldn't try and solicit help beyond your companions. Now, this doesn't sound like a major problem because, maybe they couldn't do it, but it hurts the story because there needs to be a really good reason for just you and your people to go in there and do the unthinkable on your own. And often that reason's not given, or is very, very weak. Much of this can be said of Skyrim as well. Now, it's true that Skyrim in particular acknowledges the military. They have their own thing going on, and you can help with that, and that's great. But the assumption of responsibility on your part, well, really none of it is any of your business. And even the fact that you are Dragonborn and you have this great destiny is kind of happenstance. It's not really a motivator. It just is. As a final example of failure, before we get into a game that did it right, let's take a look at Doom 3. Now, the Doom's premise is simple. You're a guy with a gun, there are demons from hell, go. Well, Doom 3 tried to give you a story. You're on Mars, some jerk opens a hell gate, monsters come, it's easy. Why didn't you leave with everyone else? Why didn't you evacuate? I mean, there are hell creatures everywhere. Things are going crazy. You had every right to drop your gun and run screaming into the distance. Now, it could be that your character is a darn determined Marine and, wants to follow orders, and that's fine. But you can only work with that for so long. The stuff that's happening here is very surreal. A person could only handle this kind of stuff for so long. The bottom line is that Doom 3, the story itself, relies on one thing, and that's the desire of the player to want to kill things, not the character. The character has very little motivation. You, as a player, needs to want to interact in this world. So that leaves no real motivation at all in the game. What's scary is that the real-world equivalent of the Doom 3 Marine would be very difficult to understand. He would seemingly be motivated by fancy alone, or at the very least, have very basic morality. In fact, his behavior would be borderline psychotic or even dangerous. And shooting back up to MMOs for a second, many of the actions that you take there are contrary to normal motivation. After all, there are more effective ways to seek fame and fortune than killing 10 kobolds and then moving on. And the one-man army/assassin approach of Skyrim would also be considered kind of psychotic in a real-world setting. I mean, just think of the number of people that you have to kill. Now, let's take a look at a game that more or less got the idea right, and that's The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. This works because there's a gradual build-up of events, and those events are pretty much always relevant to the character. The formula goes, get some stuff, save your sister. Get more stuff, save your friends. Get more stuff, and save Hyrule. Now, it's not a perfect formula, but you're generally doing small things that have large results that compound on themselves over time. And you're usually, although not always, I grant you, helping known individuals rather than being handed a request by someone you've never met before just out of hand. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Now, in your quest for Din's Pearl on Dragon Roost Island, you're told that the dragon at the top of the mountain has become angry, and the Rudo people can't get his scales for their coming-of-age, wing-growing thing. Now, you also learn about the sad son of the chief, who is reluctant to go through the process and has pretty much given up all hope because of the dragon being angry. And throughout your time on the island, you interact several times with the young dragon attendant, Medley, who feels partly responsible for the situation, and she wants to help but gets captured along the way. Now, true, you're going through the dungeon to calm the dragon, arbitrary quest, but you did it because you were primarily trying to help the kind girl that you came to know throughout your time on the island. Now, because the developers bothered to introduce you to Medley throughout your time there, the quest is more personal as compared to a vapid request by someone you had just met, resulting in a greater sense of motivation and a deeper level of morality compared to the lower tier morality or motivation associated with just quest handouts and rewards. Now, it is true that not all games need character motivation. After all, an MMO story is not the driving force of play. But if you're going to have a story and have it be the focus of the game, then character motivation is incredibly important, because without character motivation, the story-driven game collapses. The actions of the character are without meaning and serve no purpose whatsoever, other than as a means to an end. Well, that about wraps up this episode. Feel free to leave some feedback in the comments below, or requests for topics to cover. And if you enjoyed what you watched, feel free to click the like button. And as always, thanks for watching.